Hi, it's Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome to Career Coach Office Hours. Tuesdays at noon Eastern, I spend some time talking with you about different elements of job search because I believe it doesn't have to be so hard, difficult, painful, or take as long as it does. It's just the skills needed to find a job are different from those needed to do a job. And the problem is, for most of you, you're not really doing a good job of job hunting. You think you know what to do, but you're really an amateur about doing it. And the result winds up being it's taking much longer than it really needs to. So Tuesdays at noon Eastern, I spend some time talking with you about your questions about job hunting, and hopefully today's show will be helpful to you. So I'll just start by saying if you've got a question for me, put it into chat so I can answer it live, okay? I'll also mention connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/IN/the Big Game Hunter. Mention that you watch this. I like knowing I'm helping some folks. Once we're connected, your network is going to be a lot larger because that's the fact of it. My network tends to be a lot larger than most of yours. And in advance, my internet connection is not ideal. I'm not at my normal place. I'm a resident of Asheville, North Carolina. I'm at my mother-in-law's. Internet here is not ideal. It's good enough, but it's not always perfect for live streaming. So if there's a hiccup along the way, I apologize in advance. I noticed one last week, and I want to see if it's any better this week. Next week, it'll be back to normal. We're heading back to North Carolina over the weekend. I expect to be back in my office on Monday morning. If Wi-Fi is not working at that time, if internet is not working, I've got a Starlink that we're traveling with, so I'll hook up to Starlink, and that should make things a lot smoother for me. But the long and the short of it is I'm here to help you today. And one of the ways I help is with the website that you see up there, JobSearch.Community. See, normally when I point my finger, it's not an issue, but you can see my hand is disappearing. It's not ideal connections here, but we're doing the best that we can so I can help some folks. So if you come to JobSearch.Community, I coach people, of course, and you can get access to all my video courses, books, and guides about job hunting there as part of one individual price. I've got some free information on the site as well. I'm updating one of the pieces of content next week because I've done an update to it. So that'll be available next week. But for now, there's 6 or 7 pieces of content that'll help you that are completely free. And if you become an insider, you get access to all of it. As a matter of fact, at any level of becoming an insider, you get access to all my video courses, books, and guides. And the question is how much access you want to me. So, I do a lot of work with individuals for lengthy periods of time because for senior professionals, it takes time to land. So, you could become an Insider Premium member. We work together multiple times a month for service. And if you don't want a lot of contact or you don't think you need a lot of contact, I have different levels of service beneath that one where we can work together with one another. So again, that's JobSearch.Community. As I start this today, I'll just mention to you that I spend some time talking about the job market at the beginning of these shows. And one of the things I've noticed is more of what's called job stacking going on. What is that? Pretty simple. It's the idea of people doing multiple jobs concurrently. Now, job stacking became more noticeable during the pandemic, where people were basically working for multiple employers concurrently and hiding the fact that they were working for multiple employers concurrently. I'm not suggesting you do that, although if you're able to, wink, wink, go ahead. But this version of job stacking is the clean version of it, where you might have a part-time job working for one organization. The classic thing might be a help desk person or a support person who works for one firm, let's say out of DC, working remotely. for 20, and then for other firms working an additional 20 hours a week at different places around the country or around the world. And thus, the idea of stacking is because you're working with different firms at different times, you're working for multiple employers concurrently. For example, I coach people. I do, one-on-one and group coaching through my own practice, but I also present material for LHH. That's a second version of stacking that I do. I also sell stuff on Amazon, and I also have JobSearch.Community to help people. So that's a different version of it, where I've got multiple sources of income coming from a variety of different directions. You can look for things that suit you in your career. So again, start looking at job stacking, particularly if you're out of work, because you can pull in some income while continuing to look for something else. And you might be able to convert yourself to working like this permanently if that's what you want to do. So I received a number of questions in advance. And before I go further, I'll just simply say, if you've got a question for me, put it in the chat so I can answer it live. Okay. So the first question I received is it acceptable to apply for jobs that are below your skill level if they are in your area of expertise? This is an interesting question because it basically suggests I'm more senior than this job and I'm willing to do something at a lower level, but they're in your area of expertise, but they're below your skill level. And most times when I hear someone talk that way, is a job they did a while ago and they haven't done it a long time, and they're willing to take a step back in order to do it to make some money. So the problem with this is, yes, you can apply for it, but you have to answer the question for an employer. Number one, why you take this step backward in your area of expertise. And number two is why you'd stay there for any length of time, given that's below your skill level and probably at a lower salary level than what you're used to earning. So you have to proactively address these, because the fact of the matter is you won't wind up getting interviews unless you do, because they want to hire a permanent solution to a problem, not a temporary solution, unless you're going for a part-time gig or some version of temporary consulting. That's different. Even then, you have to speak to how your background in recent times fits what they're looking for. So the long and the short of it is, yes, you can apply, but you have to make a case for yourself in order to ensure that you get the shot to actually interview. Now, I received a question in chat. Hey, Sandeep, it's been a while. Good to see you. If applying for a role via LinkedIn that takes one to a company's job site and offers the option to upload a resume, is it a good idea to upload a customized cover letter as well? Absolutely. And when I think of that, so often, if you're applying for a job through an applicant tracking system, and by the way, if you can avoid applying for a job and can network your way in, that's always ideal, because that way you're able to cut the line and get to the front of it because you're carrying a recommendation with you. But that's not the question. The question is a customized cover letter as well. So start off with a customized resume. Then the customized cover letter, unless you know that there's a field for a separate cover letter, I tend to think of making the cover letter page one, so that you are able to keyword stack page one of your resume with the cover letter, and then they go to page two and see it even more so. Let me give you an example. I'm forwarding my resume to you for such and such position I saw on LinkedIn and on your website. Let me give you a sense of how my background fits the role. Flush left, you list all the skills and functionality for the position. Flush right, how long and how recently. Sorry, it's the other way around. Flush left, it's all the skills and functionality for the position. Flush right, how long and how recently you've done that. Now, what you've done by making it page one tracking system sees it on page of a hiccup with video there. As it goes further into the resume, what it discovers is, hey, there's repetition of all these terms in there. We kind of like that. So the idea is page one becomes the cover letter. The resume follows it beginning on page two. And what you've done is emphasize how your background fits the role. So again, a cover letter that demonstrates your fit with a resume that's customized for the role is very powerful, particularly if they're combined into one document, not two. Because the tendency that, hey, look, you've hired people. If you get two separate files, one that is clearly a cover letter and one's a resume, which one do you open? The resume file, right? So think like you do when you're looking at resumes. On the cover letter, page two, the beginning of the resume, it'll emphasize your qualifications and help you get that interview. And then from there, it's up to you in order to win the job. Hope that was helpful for you, Sandeep. And the answer is perfect. Thank you. Good. Happy to help. And before I go any further, I'll just simply say, if you've got any questions for me, put them into chat so I can answer them live. Also, JobSearch.Community, where all my video courses, books, and guides are available to you as part of becoming an insider at any level of service. And you can get coaching from me. You can have your questions answered in a timely way from me, no matter what level of service you hire me for. So again, that's JobSearch.Community. By the way, I'm going to sneak in something here. You may remember, I discontinued my podcast at episode 3000, No BS Job Search Advice Radio. And I've decided to bring it back beginning in November in a different format, maybe twice a week. And the format's really interesting. So you'll see it. I want to say November 4th is going to be the first issue. So, if you're not already subscribed on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you listen to podcasts. It'll be available at the beginning of November again, twice a week. Again, it's going to be fairly short episodes, generally under 10 minutes, done in a more conversational style. And that's as much as I'm going to leak about it for today. But it's going to be interesting. So wherever you listen to podcasts, start subscribing again to No BS Job Search Advice Radio. It'll pick up again at episode 3001. Okay. Let's go to the next question, which is, can you be hired at another job within the same company if you were fired from a previous job within the company? Why would they ever in a million years do that? Now, I want to be clear. You use the word fired, not laid off. Fired, you got terminated for cause. You failed. They judged you poorly. However, if you were laid off, that's different. And the result is you can wind up being able to go back to a firm that you were laid off from. But fired from a job, explain to me why you'd ever get hired to go back there. Seriously. They've got files and information galore about you and your performance that caused you to get fired. Why would they want to do that? Why would they risk it? It makes no sense. So is it possible? Yeah. Is it probable? Not in a million years. Seriously, not in a million years. Give it up. Go look someplace else. You screwed up, and now you're going to have to pay a price for it. Oh, here's a goofy one. After an interview, does a company reach back to you if you didn't get the job? Sometimes, but most of the time they don't. Sometimes it can be as simple as receiving an email that, I know this is what I used to do when I still did recruiting. because I didn't want to engage in conversation with people. I'd send an email that said, one of the hardest things in my line of work is to have to tell someone that they were rejected for a position. That is unfortunately the case with you. I hope to have other things for you, and I will circle back to you when I do. And the reason I did it that way is I just didn't want to have the conversation where people went, but why? It seemed to go so well. And often it really hadn't from their standpoint. They may have thought you were an imbecile and you thought you were wonderful. They may have seen someone who was a better fit. Nothing wrong with you, but they preferred someone else to you based upon qualifications or personality. So the long and the short of it is sometimes they do, many times they don't, because they don't want to get into a conversation that's pointless for them. So most of the time they just kind of drift off into the sunset, never to be heard from again, or send you an email or something casual that says nothing, no information really, and you're turned down and you don't know why, and they don't want to argue with you. So does it happen where you get feedback? Occasionally. Is it a situation where sometimes they'll reach back to you and tell you that you didn't get the job? Sometimes. But the long and the short of it is, don't bet on it. Seriously, don't bet on it. We've got more today. These days, is it possible to obtain a job through a recruitment agency? Of course. Of course. But the question is, what kind of work do you do? Is it desirable in the marketplace? Do firms hire people like you? To begin with, recruiters don't invent jobs, they reflect markets. And if the market isn't hiring someone like you, if the market isn't hiring someone like you through a recruiting firm, they can't help you because they're not going to get on the phone and market you. Most of the time, most of the firms, because what they're paid to do is to fill jobs, not place people. I'm going to repeat that. Most of the time, what they're paid to do is to fill jobs, not place people. And the difference is a company's paying them to find someone. You're not paying them anything for them to deliver a job to you. So is it possible? Yes. As a byproduct of the work that they're doing to fill jobs, it is possible that you can get a job through a recruiting firm. The however is, don't expect them to go out and aggressively market you. That's a joke. The firm that would do that, the recruiter who would do that, is an idiot because they're basically working for free to help you land, and you have no allegiance to them. You go to wherever it is that someone finds a job for you, in which case they would have invested a lot of time and money, because time is money for recruiters, and may wind up having earned nothing. And recruiters are commission-based people. They want to earn something from what they do. So I'll simply say, is it possible? Yes. You haven't told me the kind of work that you do in order for me to be absolutely certain. So, for example, if you work in a garden store or selling plants, I'm not sure that there are recruiters who can help you find a job. But if you have office skills, you're a technologist, an accounting and finance person, you work in what used to be called white-collar professions, well, there you can find work, and recruiters can help you. But that's not their job. Their job is to fill jobs, not to help you find one. I'll just remind you, if you've got a question for me, put it into chat so I can answer it live. Also, come over to JobSearch.Community, where all my video courses, books, and guides are available to you for one price. And you can get coaching from me. I want to help people land work. And frankly, many of you need help with doing that. So again, become an insider at JobSearch.Community. And if you don't want to do that, take the free stuff from me. This way I can help you in a variety of different ways. Okay? So next question is, how long do employers typically keep applications on file after they've been rejected or ignored? Is there a recommended waiting period before reapplying for a job? Oh boy. Okay. So here's my thinking. Small companies are different than medium-sized firms or large companies. With small firms, they don't necessarily have an applicant tracking system. A resume, an application can get thrown away. Now, when you get to medium-sized firms or larger, we're talking about data. You're uploading a resume to them. Resumes can be kept forever. Applications can be kept forever in their systems. And the result winds up being, how long do they keep them? Forever. As for a waiting period before reapplying, that depends upon whether this is a new position, whether you've interviewed with the firm and how well you did in that interview, and a million other factors, including whether they kept notes on how you did on the interview. Don't hesitate to reapply if you're actually qualified, but don't just flip a resume to them without tailoring it to the role and having a LinkedIn profile that's congruent with what it is you claim your expertise is for this particular position. Again, make sure your experience is congruent with what's shared in your LinkedIn profile, because so often firms start making comparisons between the two. And when they find inconsistencies, they reject people pretty quickly because they think you're lying to them. That's it in a nutshell. They think you're lying to them, and they don't want to go through that. So again, there's no rule for this about how soon you could do it, an hour and a half after the rejection. It's okay. But if you're not qualified, don't just simply spam your resume like it's a fast food restaurant. And you can flip your resume to them and they're just going to simply devour it and you're going to get hired. Doesn't work that way. Let's go to another question. Well, this was a fun one. What is the process for companies calling references during the hiring process? Do they only call references after job offers have been made or at other points during the phone or screening process? The next word is process there, see? So there are two basic times that references are checked. Number one, actually three. Number one is before they extend the offer. We'd like to check a reference on Jeff Altman, see what kind of work he's done, a variety of things. Do you have a few minutes? And they go through some Q&A with the reference to see how you did. Another time they check references is after you've joined the firm. And in doing it after, if they find something inconsistent about dates and salary and such, it's grounds for you being fired. I want you to hear that again, because I fielded too many calls from people who were fired from jobs because they lied on applications or, people didn't back up their stories. So, post-employment, there's a reference check process too. And the other time is a very informal way in which they receive your resume, your name rings a bell, or they receive your resume and they see that you work for a firm that they know someone at. And they may want to do an informal reference check and just call them up and say, "Hey, Lou, it's Jeff. I'm curious. There's someone I'm scheduled to meet with, or someone who submitted a resume to me who apparently used to work for your firm. Her name is whatever it is. Do you happen to know them? Would you, tell me what you know about them?" So that's another time a reference is checked. It's done in an informal way. No real, they're checking with someone that they actually know at a firm in order to see whether or not, they're willing to attest to your capabilities. So those are the times where most often a person's references can be checked. Another question I received is, what is the average number of interviews before getting hired? There's no average. You kidding? You expect someone is going to have an average number of interviews, like I can recite this, like a person who's interviewing for an electrician's role or an HVAC position or a financial analyst position is going to have a standard number of interviews versus someone interviewing for a C-suite role. There's no way to answer this question, and it's not useful to you. Focus instead on making sure that everyone you meet is enamored with you, thinks you do world-class work, would love to have you on board at their firm, rather than just simply, how many interviews should I expect? Ask them, if things go well, walk me through the interview process with your firm, because one firm is going to do it differently than another. And two of them, of the five, may do it similarly, but different. So the long and the short of it is there's no average to this. There's no typical number of interviews. Doesn't work that way. Okay. I've got more, and I do these shows for about a half hour's time. So I'll just simply say to you, I'll be back next week, but I'm going to do this question. I'll see if anyone else has questions for me as well. So this one is, how long does it, this is a different question. I was confused. I thought it was the previous one, but it's similar but different. How long does it typically take for a company to make a hiring decision after interviewing all the candidates? No typical answer. There is no typical answer. It could be 10 seconds. It could be 10 days. They may need to confer with one another and sit down and talk with each other in order to get a clear handle on what everyone's thinking is, what their doubts are, what their pluses are, come to a consensus and make a decision. That can take a week. It can take 2 weeks because of travel schedules, vacations, or what have you. But it could also happen very quickly, where everyone's able to confer and go, oh, God, Jeff Altman, he was terrific, and make the decision immediately. How much do you think we should offer him? Good. Let's do it and add 10,000 on top of that. Anything can happen, but the long and the short of it is, for you, that's not a useful question. Focus on making sure everyone falls in love with you. There's no love. You're not going to get an offer. There's no honey that's going to follow. So focus on creating the great impression and not trying to figure out how many interviews is it going to be. Okay? So I'll conclude by saying I'm Jeff Altman. I'll be back next week with more for JobSearch.Community and Career Coach office hours. If you've got questions for me but can't make it live, you can message them to me at linkedin.com/IN/the big game hunter. Mention that you saw this. I like knowing I'm helping some folks. And once we're connected, your network is going to be a lot larger, because mine tends to be a lot larger than most people's. Also, visit JobSearch.Community, where I've got video courses, books, and guides to help you with your job search. Plus, I answer your questions and I coach people. Again, JobSearch.Community, where there's a lot that you can learn asynchronously. No need to talk to anyone without talking to me or anyone else for that matter. Hope you have a terrific day, and most importantly, be great. Take care.